Hello and welcome to today's show on Our Game. Michael Verney here, joined as ever by Shane Stapleton, usually the other way around, but we're mixing it up for today. Brought to you as ever by orgaretro.com for any of these sweet jerseys like this Mead Beauty. Mick Lyons, I don't know if I have much resemblance to Mick Lyons now or half as tough as him, but if you want to reel in the ears, I suppose, you go to orgaretro.com, use the promo code OurGame to get 15% off that absolutely sweet Mayo number as well, but you never know who might be donning that on the sideline this year. I think there's also another one underneath, that absolute beauty of a retro Dublin jersey, a la the late great Brian Mullins or Jimmy Keaveney. Shane, how are you? Good to be back again.
Yeah, not so bad. Yeah, I was at Croke Park yesterday watching Kilmacud Crokes and Ballyhale Shamrocks playing out an absolute cracker. Not to mention Crokes were playing the Downs in the football final as well. But a great whole weekend of it. And you were stuck over at a race course, weren't you?
I was in Fairyhouse yesterday. There was obviously a big hype around Honeysuckle starting back for, I think it's her 4th or 5th season now. She was going for 17 runs unbeaten. She's never been beaten on the track or even in her point-to-point, but she was beaten yesterday. So a lot of shock around Fairyhouse yesterday. Kind of got me thinking as well, Shane, what are the best GA unbeaten streaks maybe down through the years? Limerick were on a serious unbeaten streak. I think they went the whole of 2020 unbeaten, didn't they? They were on a fair unbeaten streak. The Dubs were on a fair unbeaten streak during their 5 in a row run as well. Anything else kind of spring to mind, teams that were dominating, even at club level?
Ballygunner, they'd be up there, especially locally. Corofin in knockout games. Ballyhale there for a long time as well. Remember when they wasn't it that when Henry Shefflin was over the team, they hadn't lost any knockout game. Now they'd probably lost a group game here and there. So they're the ones that come to mind straight away. Thurles were dominating in Tipperary there for a while. Schlockneil, of course, have won a 10 in a row in Derry. They've just been knocked out of the Club All-Ireland Championship after the Ulster final win for Dunloy. So they're ones that come to mind. People, get your comments in. Let us know who's had the most impressive winning run, unbeaten run, and why. Because of, there's obviously certain counties where it's more difficult. You see Fergus Butler saying, Verney delivering the goods once again. Yeah, we do our best. Joe Butler says a super game between Ballyhale and Kilmacud. It could have gone either way. A fair play to Kilmacud for a terrific comeback, enthralling game. Squeaky bum time the last 5 minutes for the Shamrocks. And Turin and Mayo, says Joe Butler. Yeah, they have a few necklaces together, a few titles, and isn't it 3 Connacht titles in a row as well?
Yeah, 3 Connacht titles in a row. They're awaiting their All-Ireland semi-final over the coming weeks as well. I believe they have a couple of big injuries. I don't know if Shane Boland's going to be able to feature. He picked up a couple of knocks recently. But yeah, they're flying. I tell you what's really impressive about an unbeaten streak is when it is the whole way through, like league and championship, and they haven't had a game maybe to recalibrate or knock them back into shape or knock any complacency off. Like Thomas's this year, they had a nice little wake-up call when Turlock beat them in the group stages and were able to kind of, not that they bounced back, but they were beaten well in that game and were able to come back. When you can go the whole way through unbeaten, I think it's even more impressive again because you haven't got that wake-up call, shall we say, to knock everyone back into shape. But they're just some of them. We'd love to hear any more of the best unbeaten streaks. Obviously, Fergus Butler has in Ballymacarbie and Waterford ladies football is a 41 in a row. That's some going really. And when you're talking about wake up calls, there, I suppose them even getting beaten in that in the All-Ireland semi-final and well beaten by Kilkerran and Clonberne, that'll, I'm sure, motivate them to come back again and dominate in Waterford and potentially in Munster again next year. Joe Butler says Carnacon ladies in Mayo for many years. Yeah, I forget. I think it might have been 23. 23 is the number in my head anyway, that they were on a run of 23 titles in a row, and then they were eventually beaten, and it kind of nearly coincided with Cora Staunton's retirement and heading off to the AFL as well. But so much to discuss from the weekend, Shane.
Oh, yeah. Adrian McGrath's in about Ballymacarbie. The ladies must have some ludicrous numbers, surely. When we were preparing the show, we're always online probably about an hour before the show, chatting all sorts of nonsense. But in between, a good nugget comes in here and there. And you had a good one, actually. This came around from Shane Beston getting the job done over the weekend for Ballygiblin, wasn't it?
Yeah.
He's yet another person who's in the middle of getting married and somehow manages to give an exhibition on the pitch. And it's not the only example lately, is it?
No. Andrew Sullivan, my mate from Borough, was on to me there just saying, like, what is it with people getting married and being unbelievable the next day in a game? So Shane Beston hit 3-3 the other day for Ballygunner. Katrina McConnell hit 7 points last week for, was it Dunloy, the day after getting married and getting helicoptered into the ground. And Stacey Keogh got married on the Saturday and played the All-Ireland Club final on the Sunday with Owler to Bala, and ended up player of the match as well. So I don't know what it is like, but it doesn't seem to be like, it seems like, I don't know, maybe there's an element of, not that you care any less, but that there's bigger things going on and you're not maybe getting washed up in the whole hype and, you know, excitement of it all maybe, and you're coming in maybe a lot more relaxed.
Well, you know, when you were getting married earlier this year, did you find that you had a spring in your step at training, or that you could finally go, Jesus, I can finally not talk about the wedding for a few minutes, go in here and pull and drag out of some lad who's scoring 3-5 off me?
Well, we got married over in Malta, and there was 6 people at the wedding, so I didn't have to worry too much about that. And
everyone turned down the invite.
And I didn't go back training for about a month after. So I tell you what, there was a spring in my step in the casino the next day. That's the one thing I will say to you.
Oh, stop, you are some gin. There's some amount of news going on at the weekend. So number one, Dublin CEO John Costello, he wants a return of minor to under 18. That's something we've talked about the other day, but I'll just give a little bit from basically what he said in his annual report. And he goes, the experimentation is always worthwhile in any walk of life, but sometimes you have to put your hand up and admit that it didn't work. And so it is, in my opinion, with the under 17 and under 19 grades at club level. I welcome the recent decision of the task force to decouple these grades from their inter-county equivalent and give counties the autonomy to return to under 18 competition at club level if they wish to do so. Arguably, this should also be examined at inter-county level also. There's too much of an overlap with players at under 19 club level and adult grade. And what we've experienced in Dublin is that there are too many schedules fixtured that go unfulfilled. It's also particularly difficult for clubs with smaller playing numbers. What players want is meaningful competitions, and unfortunately, this has not proven to be the case, so it's time to call it a halt. So, yeah, we won't dwell on it too much. We touched on it the other day, but...
Just the one thing I will say is, I am a big believer in, when something hasn't worked, you just put your hands up, mea culpa, and you go back to, you know, what it was, or you try and develop what it was to be better. But like, if it's not working, you know, they say if it's not broken, don't fix it. If it's not working, do fix it. You know, you have to. You know what I mean? And I think it's, I don't know, like someone like John Costello even coming out and saying that as well, it's just even more of a groundswell of support from people on the ground and at grassroots for it to go back to the way it was.
Yeah, so the GA is going to have a centralized match results and player records archive, which is a great thing to.
Shane, this has been longing for so long. Like, imagine to say, like, basically, I remember was it the year before last, David Tubridy became the highest scoring player in the history of the Football League, and the only reason I knew about it was because I was chatting to Owen Brennan down in Clare, and a fella that looks after stats and keeps an eye on stats was on to him about it and said, if David Tubridy kicks more than 2 points here, he's going to become the greatest, you know, the highest scorer ever. And it's only because of like lads like that who are keeping it together because of a passion that we get any of these type of great stats or statistics. And at the end of the day, the GA is full of history, and it's so important to look after your history as well. You see it now with papers, maybe, you know, carrying less and less, maybe match reports. It's harder to, like, it's a record of who was playing what game. I have a great book here with all the All-Ireland finals that were ever played in any grade, and you can see who was playing. You're even in one of them yourself, Shano, and I'm in one of them myself too. So, you know, like, you need to be, like, everything, you know, to say everything is on the internet, but there's a lot of stuff that's very, very hard to find on the internet. And I think having a database with all these stats and records it's long overdue, I would say.
Yeah, did you ever see Peep Show? You have Super Hands, and Jez, and Super Hands is always full of these quirks and tweaks, and just, he's an absolute ape, but it's very funny. And he goes, you want to keep an eye on this internet thing. I think this internet thing is going to be big. And this is obviously 20 years after it's taken over the world. Maurice Deegan is going to be bowing out from refereeing. He was the man in the middle as Kilmacud Crokes beat the Downs in the Leinster final. So to end up in the thick of that now is not ideal for his last game out. But what do you make of players or referees having to retire from the top level at 50 years of age? Because if he has more to offer and he can pass a fitness test, a bit like a car. It starts out, it only has to be NCT'd every few years. then you go to a yearly NCT to ensure that it's still up to code. Like, he's still roadworthy, surely.
I'd say your yoke is going monthly NCTs now at this stage. I have to say now, Shane, I think it's a farcical rule. I think it's a mad rule. Like you cannot say that Maurice Deegan is like coming to the end of his tether as an inter-county referee. Like, in an era where it's so hard to get top-class referees, we're actually pushing guys out the door. Like, John Keenan next year, Shane, will be his last year. I'd love to see John Keenan referee. Next year is his last year. He's 49 this year. He's going to be 50 next year. To me, he is coming into his own as a referee. Like, he's absolutely flourishing as a referee. If he's 55 and he can still pass the metrics that are needed for, to get up and down and cover the ground that he needs to do, and it's, he's showing no sign of lagging or anything like that, why would we push them out the door? I think it makes no sense to me. As well as that, Shane, with the condition that most referees are gymming now as well, no more than players are. They mightn't be doing it maybe as much as a modern day player is, but they're looking after themselves probably better maybe than referees would have in the past. And we've more knowledge available to us now. So I just think it's a bit bizarre. I think Richard Hogan just says raise the age to 60. I think it's a case by case basis. If people are passing their tests, I think you stay going until, as you say, they're no longer roadworthy. But it's so hard to get good referees now. Why would we push people out the door just because of age? And Shane, is it not like this is totally ageist? Is it not? Really,
it is, and we're in the era of anyone who's if you're of any sort of a minority, you're kind of, these days allowances are made for you, and ageism maybe in some ways comes into that bracket of, I'm not sure what the overall kind of percentage of people are that are over 50 or whatever. I don't really know the ins and outs of that, but in terms of an era where we don't want to single people out and sort of make them scapegoats because they are from whatever type of background, surely ageism falls into that too. And when it's so difficult to get referees, really should be holding on to them as long as
well as that, Shane. Not every player. I don't know what the average age for retirement is now. We're just going to say it's 30 or 31. You see Sean Murphy retiring and Paul Morris retiring as well. They're both around that similar age. But that's not to say that there's not a Tony Brown that can go on to 40, or there's not a Seamus Callan that can go on to close to 33 or 34. There's not a Patrick Horgan, a TJ Reid that are going to go to 34 and 35. So I think it has to be taken case by case. If someone's still performing to that level, if they drop off or are dropped off the the All-Ireland referees panel, that's a different story completely. But by all accounts, yesterday that was Maurice Deegan's last gig at inter-county, or shall we say inter-provincial club, shall we say, as well. So I just think I think it's needless. I think it should be raised to at least 55 or judged on a case by case basis.
And funny you mentioned Paul Morris there, who's stepped away from Wexford, retired from Wexford. We were at a charity fundraiser last week, a table quiz, and afterwards I went into Devitt's Bar on Camden Street. There was Paul Morris. He never told me he was going to step down. He could have given me the exclusive. Are
you surprised that he didn't go, Shane, I'm going to step down there, just said to give the OurGame exclusive?
A selfie there with Paul. Look, he's retired. OurGame exclusive. Okay, let's move on to the next bit of next story, which is Lindsay Davies. She's retired from inter-county football, won 5 All-Irelands there, so fair play to Lindsay. Great
just
career.
On that, Shane, I'd say there was a period in her career where she thought she was never going to win All-Ireland. And isn't it great?
Was it 4 All-Irelands in a row they lost, or was it 3 or 4?
Definitely 3 or 4. Actually, she back there in 10, actually. Sorry now. She was.
Yeah, she probably was there in 10.
Then had a massive gap to before when Mick Bowen came in, did a load of final heartbreak. And I suppose the last couple of years probably ended up a bit disappointingly for her, but she has a fair haul to her name.
Yeah, certainly does. So we know what the situation is going to be in the All-Ireland Club Hurling semi-finals. Dunloy are going to meet St. Thomas's, and Ballyhale are against Ballygunner. Now, the talk is that Semple Stadium is being closed for essential maintenance work, which means that the games won't be played there. In many ways, and maybe this wouldn't be the case for Dunloy, but it's certainly for 3 to 4 teams. It would be a very handy venue to have this. And Ballyhale and Ballygunner are very familiar with the place. And so are St. Thomas's also. Dunloy, it is a fair spin. But it looks like it's going to be at Croke Park because, and to me, Semple actually looked in good nick. But obviously, the groundsman there feels that it needs essential maintenance work. But Croke Park is going to feel a little bit hollow. It was very hollow yesterday. There was great support there and all that kind of stuff, but it feels hollow in an 80,000-seater stadium. And that'll be the case as well for the All-Ireland Club semi-finals. And the other thing is St. Thomas's, I believe, have a wedding on the Saturday, so they can only play on the Sunday. So you're going to have one or both of these games clashing with the World Cup final, which is on at 3. And people can say, it doesn't matter and all that kind of stuff. But I know that it affects attendances. Like the difference in the 2 club finals that we contested in recent years, I can't remember what game was on the Saturday of the second one in 2018, but there was some huge soccer match on, and it definitely affected the attendance because I think there was at least double the amount of people there the previous year.
Yeah, there's been a couple of Ireland games that have, even soccer games that have coincided with games that were going on in Croke Park, and the attendance was low. And even remember Ireland in Egypt years ago, I think Offaly beat Kilkenny the same day in Croke Park, and it was only like 9,000 or 10,000 at it. But like it's a world event. I don't even watch soccer, and I haven't watched a minute of the tournament yet, but I'd probably end up watching it. I'd probably end up watching that because it's the sort of thing that the world does stop for. And unfortunately, if there's a GAA game going on at the same time, the diehards will be there. But what's going to be a marquee game will get blown over a bit by the soccer final. No point in saying any different.
Yeah, and I've been bet into the World Cup. I've barely missed a minute, actually, to be honest with you. But still, I'm not missing a minute of the GAA either. Did you see the news that Fintan O'Toole broke this, that St. Finbarr's Brian Hayes, he's set to leave the Cork football panel to join up with the hurlers instead. He's a big man. He obviously can hurl. He's been part of those under-20 teams that have done a lot of damage in recent years. Another blow to the footballers. I'm sure John Cleary will be devastated to lose him because, he's an important part of St. Finbarr's getting to an All-Ireland semi-final in the club football last year. But another boost, I suppose, to the hurling setup and Pat Ryan.
Yeah, interesting just to see the draw. Like, you want to see, are any players going to be, are their heads going to be turned? And obviously, Brian Hayes is one whose head has probably been turned by Pat Ryan. And even, I'm sure, early indications of what's maybe going on within the hurling setup. But definitely a big coup or as I've heard some people saying, a big coup for Pat Ryan and the hurlers. And, another maybe statement of intent of that they're going to try and have everybody they can possibly have on their ship for the season ahead. Just a question there from Richard Hogan. It's a fair question too. What is the need for these being played before Christmas? I know there is a reason, but surely they could wait until January. The football semi-finals are definitely not until the second weekend in January. I think it's 7th, 8th. I think they're that weekend. So, yeah, listen, it does. I tell you something from a Ballyhale point of view yesterday, and I was kind of looking at them, and you were thinking, they look like they're flagging in the second half, and you kind of did look like they were blowing quite hard, and you're thinking 2 weeks is a lot to try and turn something like that around if there is any sort of fitness deficit there. That's not to say that there is. It just kind of optically it looked like there might be. But I tell you something, I'm not going to lie, it's a beautiful early Christmas present. Look forward to before Christmas.
It is. It's going to be a cracker. And you never know, Dunloy against St. Thomas's could also be a cracker. Let's see. Seamus P says, random comment, but it feels like lockdown on the 5K radius is back when I see Vernie's hair. Goodbye 2022. Hello March 2020.
Fair point.
Richard Hogan, is TJ showing signs of sleepless nights? Obviously, he just had a baby recently, but he had some very good moments at times. Vernie stealing my tweets. Shocking carry on, says Hugh Paddy.
Well, it was a conversation between me and Hugh Paddy, so I was, I'm actually embellishing your comment here, am I not? I've forgotten who the comment was from, but they definitely, there was a time in the second half where they looked like they were run off their feet. Now, and just something you say, Shane, about Croke Park being hollow, I have to say, it did seem like, I don't know how many people from Kilmacud and the Stillorgan area were there, but I also wondered, did that play a bit of a factor in the comeback? Like, they were 11 points down when the goal went in, and it was like they were 11 points up. Genuinely, and I did feel, looking at the game, that the crowd did breathe some new energy into them.
What do you make of Ballyhale using no sub in the match? And even as the thing is going away from in a big, big way, you would have thought that Pat Hoban would be looking behind him and thinking, well, what do I have here? And look, I have the match program here. I was in at it, and they've 29 on the panel, and there's some good players there. And obviously they were short of Ronan Corcoran. I think he might have had a head blow the last day out, so he wasn't available for this game. And he's a big loss. Remember, after half-time, he was so good against Naas, got 2 points in a row, and I think maybe won a free, possibly in between. I'm not sure the exact order. But ultimately, Ballyhale won 222 to 219. And I was doing co-commentary with Joe Troy on Midlands Radio for this. And the first half, it feels like you're just constantly slating Crokes, like not intentionally, but you are pointing out how poorly they're going. And we were kind of almost dreading the second half. how are you going to put, slap a bit of lipstick on this pig here, turn a pig's ear into a silk purse? It was going to be very difficult, but you were actually just delighted there was a bit of a comeback. Because it was 1-15-7 at half time. Ballyhale got the first 3 points of the second half, and you thought, this could be 25 points. This could be like what happened to Clock Ballycalla last year. But at least we got a game of it, because it allowed you, as you were saying there, it was difficult to get a massive atmosphere when you've such a big stadium and, not the biggest crowd in the world. But thank God we just had something to get us going in the second half, because otherwise you were just living off fumes, I suppose, given how tame the game had been.
Yeah, it was a mad game, Shane, wasn't it? You have to say, Kilmacud went scoreless for the guts of about 20 minutes in the first half. And you're thinking, there's no way. I think it was from 7:45 to 27:25 in the first half. They went scoreless. They remained on 3 points, basically.
Yeah.
And Ronan Hayes actually did really well to buy a free to end that rush, because he kind of held on to Joey Holden's arm rather than Joey holding on to
it wasn't a free. It definitely wasn't a free.
But that's cuteness, Shane. That is an elder statesman knowing that I need to manufacture something here. We need to get a score on the board.
He's about 24.
Yeah, well, he's an elder. He's around a fair while. He's definitely one of their elder statesmen. I'd say he's one of the oldest on their team by a mile, actually.
Well, when I spoke at Ushin O'Rourke last week, Ushin was saying he's about the third oldest in there. So I suppose, your point,
he's around the same age.
He's one of the
same age. But imagine to say they went for 20 minutes scoreless against the Shamrocks. We have to call them the Shamrocks now, because we've been recorrected. We can call them Ballyhale. Is it Moycullen, Knock Topher, yeah? Yeah, so we'll say the Shamrocks, and we'll say Ballyhale every now and then as well. But imagine to say they went scoreless for 20 minutes and still clocked up 2:19 and ran Ballyhale to within an inch of their lives. The turnaround in the second half was, and this is something I want to ask you. I'm looking at it from the TV, and I only got to look back at it last night because I was at the races. From your bird's eye view, what changed? They definitely seemed to compete under the Ballyhale puckouts an awful lot better, and were gobbling them up. But tactically, had they more men behind the ball? What was it? Because it was fantastic to watch, I have to say.
Yeah, well, look, I think the matchups would have been one of the things that was important. So in the first half, TJ Reid at times, not all the time, because the way the Shamrocks lads, they do kind of change position and all that. Generally, you'll always have Colin Fennelly full forward the odd time he comes out. But TJ was starting off centre forward, and he was up against Mark Grogan, and TJ was getting a little bit of joy. And I suppose the other thing is that the wind, sometimes you just can't ignore the fact that the wind is really dictating the game. And it didn't feel that bad high up in the Hogan stand. But at times I was looking at Richie Reid. He'd get fed a ball in his own probably D, and he'd be dropping it all the way into the square, which is very difficult for any defence to deal with. And Dara Butler was under savage pressure. He actually won an awful lot of great balls.
Brilliant, Shane.
He's really good. But I think at times the Crokes lads, they were trying to work the ball out from the back, and they were struggling with it. But anyway, the thing is that Richie Reid was able to deliver from distance and get it into the square, where he has these powerful players in there that are very good at winning it. So that was one thing. And then Crokes were trying to obviously work the puckouts. And at times Eddie Gibbons, who, remember I was saying, he's a lovely hurler. He was wing forward for them just 3 or 4 years ago. But he probably wasn't putting quite enough power on the puckouts. And they were kind of hanging a little bit in that wind. And once or twice his own players, now maybe some of his players could have attacked the ball a little bit more. Maybe it was a combination of the two. But they just couldn't win a puck out at all. You saw that.
And they were caught standing a bit, even flat-footed a bit, receiving the puck out. Yeah, I know what you mean, yeah.
But when the wind has the ball hanging up in the air, it can be very difficult, because let's say you're a wing forward and the ball is coming and it's holding up in the air. You know that the wing back has time to kind of time his jump and go all over the back of you. As a wing back or a half back, it's a glorious position to be in. And what I couldn't understand, and I was saying on the live commentary there on Midlands, was that Crokes have 2 lads playing in the full forward line, and they're staying there for their own puck out. The ball is not getting up there at any stage. So why not just flood the half forward line with players and try to win a few breaks, or at least stop the ball going all the way back up the pitch so quickly? Again, easy to say that when you're up with the bird's eye view and you don't have the pressure and things going on around you and all this kind of stuff. So I totally understand that, it's easy for me to say it. But the second half, it was just kind of flip reversal. Again, sometimes just the wind does change things for you. So when Eddie Gibbons would hit a puck out, and it's obviously coming that bit harder and faster. As a half back, if you go up to bat it or catch it, it's coming at you so fast that a lot more of these break through. Would you say that that's...
Yeah, 100%. And if it breaks through, that's because the first rule of defending is to stop the ball, in my opinion, as a halfback.
Yeah.
But if it goes through, it's so dangerous.
Yeah, and then when it did break through, the pace that Crokes had in their team, and I'm looking at the likes of Dara Purcell, Ronan Hayes. Like, Ronan Hayes didn't get on a huge amount of ball in the first half, but in the second half, he, along with the likes of Fergal Whiteley, they were just, and Brian Hayes, who's Ronan Hayes' brother, they were just turning and running at Shamrocks all the time. And they were turning the likes of Evan Shefflin, Dara Corcoran and Paddy Mullen and so on and so forth. They were turning them around the other way. And they were finding it very difficult. Like, when we were previewing this game, didn't we kind of say that we thought the athleticism of these Kilmacud Croke lads would be something that would trouble Ballyhale? And it's, it's mad that they had to go so far behind in the game before they were able to get on top of that. If they had to manage the difficult period of the game a little bit better, maybe they could have actually won this. Obviously, they got back close enough that they were almost within striking distance anyway.
Yeah, there's a skill in that, isn't there? A damage limitation and knowing that the other team is hitting a purple patch. I'll never forget. Remember Galway and Clare in that 2018 All-Ireland semi-final, and Clare were at 6s and 7s, and they did it the second day as well in the replay. I think they nearly withdrew everyone behind the ball.
But Colin Galvin went back sweeper, and then Galway just decided, let's keep putting a high ball up constantly here, and they all just broke to him because he's such a good player. But sorry, one other thing I have to say in terms of Crokes and what they changed. They were constantly man-on-man in the second half, I found, especially with the puck-outs. They weren't allowing any easy options out. The odd time it happened. But the other thing was, when TJ was out the field, Brian Sheehy was down marking him. So obviously he's involved in both panels. And athletically, he's very, very strong. And he's a very big man. And like, TJ had been catching ball and doing damage on different players. But again, the ball was coming up that bit slower. And when you're an athletic back and you're going on to an older player, like, you probably have a better opportunity of breaking even. Dara Butler started winning ball. Again, it wasn't coming in with quite the same speed because of that wind. And because he's powerful, he was able to get out in front. Keno Kohasic came into the game. And Fergal Whiteley as well. You saw that point he scored.
Class, yeah.
Oh my God.
But Shane, it's one thing stopping a ball. It's another thing control. Like, he stopped and controlled it into his path. Like, he didn't stop it and end up flat-footed. He ended up stopping it, controlling it, and moving it on to himself. And then carrying it he must have carried about 60 yards and then struck it over the bar off his hurl. And it was things like that helped to turn the game for them. I think the TJ point is interesting. Pat Hoban kind of said that TJ has been carrying a knock or that. And he definitely, like, to me, TJ is one of TJ's best attributes is his work rate without the ball. And yesterday, like, he wasn't able to cover that ground when they were without the ball. He wasn't able to track back. And maybe Ronan Corcoran's loss around the middle of the field as well. That was where TJ in around 11, Corcoran in around 8. They were able to go through there. Both were kind of missing yesterday. TJ was there, but he was more of an attacking player yesterday than a defender, I would say. But I just loved watching the Crokes when they got on top. And the thing about when you do get on top, if you're able to score from play, it's so much more of a benefit than play stopping for a minute and you're stroking over a free. So I'd always encourage lads, if you get that advantage or, someone's after pulling you back, it's not a free shot, I would say. It's put this ball over the bar and make the keeper puck it out 10 seconds later again. And don't let them stop the momentum. And I think Crokes did that really well yesterday. And just on the keeper as well, like, Dean Mason has probably saved them a couple of times in a row now. He made a great save from Consoline about a minute or two before the goal and scrambled away the rebound in before someone was lurking there. A vigilant corner forward was lurking there to tap in the rebound. And, these are his first two appearances in Croke Park since, I don't think he was at fault for that Harry Ruddle goal. I just think it was one of those things, and it probably bounced perfect, or not perfect for a goalie and perfect for the attacker. But his next two performances in Croke Park have been absolutely outstanding, and he probably they barely kept them in the game when they were really hanging on. And the wind must have been a lot more deceptive than it looked to me, or even to you, because like Colin Fennelly dropping a ball short, Owen Cody dropped the ball short. Paddy Mullen hit a wide at the end as well. Ballyhale had chances to really put this game to bed and they didn't take it. And I tell you something as well, what I thought was fascinating. I thought the Ballyhale body language after the game was fascinating. They didn't look like they'd won, to me anyway, and they always celebrate no matter what it is. Colin Fennelly stood after the match and he just inhaled oxygen for about a minute, such was the effort that it took to get them over the line. And they relieved men this morning, I'd say.
Yeah, like to be 14 points ahead 5 minutes into the second half, and then 7 minutes later, there's just a point in it. At that point, it was, let me just check, 2:15 to 1:19. Like an unbelievable turnaround, because like at half-time, you would have said that it was a complete no-show from Kilmacud Crokes. They'd completely fallen flat. The occasion maybe it got to them. They were getting bullied. And then to do that to a team that's won a couple of All-Irelands in recent years, I mean, no matter what, they've died with their boots on. Like in the first half, Crokes got just 12 scoring chances compared with 27 from Ballyhale.
Ballyhale were wasteful in the first half too. Very wasteful with the breeze.
Yeah. And then in the second half, so in the last number of minutes, Ballyhale converted just 1 out of 10 scoring chances. Is that Ballyhale to you? That's not typical Ballyhale at all, is it?
Oh, definitely not. And I think we're not going to talk about the All-Ireland semi-final too much because that's a bit away. But if you look at Ballygunner's moving time, and when they move, like the third day of a major, they always say, like the third day of a major in GA terms is the 30th, start of the 31st minute to the end of the 44th. And that's when Ballygunner move. And yesterday, that was when Ballyhale completely stalled and totally malfunctioned. They hit 1-4 in the last 30 minutes of the game, including injury time, which is, and it was a very soft goal. There's no point in saying any different. And I have great time for Eddie Gibbons, as I said before as well. But I have a bee in my bonnet about keepers leaving their line and leaving an empty line. It absolutely drives me cuckoo.
Yeah, like so this was Owen Keneally. He dropped in that shot around 49th minute, something like that. And it was a pointed attempt that was dropping short of the goals. And really and truly, what needs to happen there, and look, we're saying it here, it's grand to say it, easy to say it after the fact, but something that you and I have always talked about is just as a goalkeeper, if you know the ball's going to carry to you, scream at the fullback or the last man, hold your man out, so therefore I could just catch it in the breadbasket there. And unfortunately, look, we're not singling out Eddie Gibbons, he did an awful lot right as well, but it's just so costly at that stage of the game, and it's very hard to come back from that at that point. And to be fair to Crokes, they did stay going, but it kind of was the death knell, wasn't it, really?
It kind of was, because Ballyhale were just able to hold on. And listen, it gave them oxygen when they badly needed it. It was perfect for Ballyhale Shamrocks. It was the one thing that Kilmacud didn't want to happen, because it just deflated the balloon ever so slightly and they just weren't able to get it back up there after. To me, like I have a bee in my bonnet about keepers leaving their line like that. If he was going to leave his line, to me, and this is talking about any keeper, the fullback has to be like completely holding the forward out and has to give him like a couple of yards to work with himself. But just when there's three lads in there, there's a ball in around, there's hurls waving, it's just too easy for the keeper to miss the flight of the ball, and that looks like what happened there.
Yeah, and it was very costly for the Downs as well, and we'll come to that a little bit later on, but like a high ball has to be dealt with. And there's plenty of comments coming in here. Crokes couldn't get over the 3-point gap, says ML89. Hurled class, and then they looked nervous and shaky once the gap was close and the game was there to be won. They reverted to first half type. Free at the end was awful. But you know, in a situation where you're chasing a huge deficit in the game, a bit like Dublin against Kilkenny just a couple of years ago. They came from 16 behind to draw a level, and then maybe you exhale and think, okay, finally we're back level, or finally we're back unbelievably close. And then maybe people kind of drop just for a second, drop the concentration, drop the intensity, whatever it might be. And, you know, by the way, Dara Purcell, I think it was another 5 points he scored.
Yeah.
You know, I've obviously talked about him to you a number of times, having coached him, but to me, he's just a leader. And like, to be such a young lad and to be out there scoring 5 points is some stuff. And then his younger brother, Sean, who I believe is going to be a serious talent, he came on and won that. I think he won a free near the end or created a chance. Like a very small little young fella coming in and making an impact straight away. Fergal Whiteley was very good in fairness, says Richard Hogan. Hugh Paddy Crokes stuck to the system and that got them back in brilliantly. But in the 9 minutes, they could have done with a Hail Mary or two, time and place for a system maybe. There was once or twice towards the end where they pumped ball. One was, I think, onto Darren Mullen's hand. It was a crossfield ball that wasn't hit particularly well. And then another one, Joey Holden came up with a brilliant catch. But both goals were hugely avoidable. Like, you know, obviously it was a brilliant save from Eddie Gibbons for that first attempt. And then Rob O'Loughlin really should have cleared the ball. And I mean, both goals were avoidable. And you kind of have that bit more of a chance of winning the game if you're giving away soft goals. Soft goals kill teams, don't they?
They do. Just on Hugh Paddy's point there, and you've said it several times, like, you will not score if you do not shoot. They had a free at the end. Just put it in the mixer, or put topspin on it, aim a crossbar high, or just get it in there. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah.
Whereas I think they were just trying to be a bit too clever, and I think Evan Shefflin was trying to be a bit too clever with that hand pass that led to the first Crokes goal as well. Adrian Mullen had come out and gave him a lovely hand pass, and he was 30 yards out from goal, and they were under pressure, and tries to give it I just think trying to be too smart. I think just for Kilmacud with that free at the end, or just get it in there. I tell you what, Shane, this is the best way of putting it. Give somebody the opportunity to miss it. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah.
Make somebody force a mistake, or at least make them do something. If someone pulls off an outstanding save, hold your hands up and say too good or whatever. But don't, like, a short free out to the wing. Like, I don't know sure what he was going to do from there. What was the best result from there? Win a free a bit closer, which wouldn't have been any benefit. So, like, and then it just, and I'm bringing it up on today's show, and you brought it up the last day. It brings even more admiration for the tip miners and the ability and the, within your head at that stage of a game to have the wherewithal to actually put a ball in the way he put it in. The boys were just beyond their years, I would have to say.
Yeah, and towards the end, I think Oisin O'Rourke went for a quick little free in and around the 21 to someone who was just inside him at the edge of the square. And I just thought, maybe just have a crack at goal yourself. And but look, again, it's easy to say it here. They obviously gave an exhibition in that second half. Quayle Conway's goal from around the 21. Yeah. What a finish that was. And like, he pops up with points here and there, but I can't think of him scoring too many goals for Crokes over the years. But that was a cracker. Verney delighted that Ballyhale got out of jail here, says James S.
They're the Leinster team, sure.
Yeah,
they're both Leinster teams, but Dublin is what should we say, a province unto itself at this stage, particularly with the power that the GA give them and the financial clout they give them. I nearly landed myself in a big time there.
You sure did. So do you think there's anything here in terms of, like, the Shamrocks, that any of the aura was chipped away a little bit here in this game?
Oh, if I was from the Shamrocks, they'd be a bit worried now going into the next game. I won't lie. When they're good, they're very good. And it was the same a bit last year when they went through ropey stages in games. Like they had Rhinus beaten in the first 50 minutes of that Leinster semi-final, let them back in. They had Mount Leinster beaten in the quarter-final, let them back in. Who else did they let back in? Obviously, Ballygunner, they probably should have been out of sight in that game, or 3 or 4 ahead at least.
St. Thomas's?
Yeah, St. Thomas's. I think Thomas is a bit different, because I think Thomas's were probably the better team on the balance of play. But they're going to have to raise their game again massively for Ballygunner. But the thing about it is the emotion that will come with it. And, like, I don't know, this is the game that they wanted all along. Like, there's no point in saying any different. And you can sugarcoat anyway. Like, this is the team, and this is the game that they wanted at this stage. And I'd imagine they will rise their game again. But the aura definitely has been chipped away at, and it definitely does look like, the heartbeat of the team, or, well, the new heartbeat, I would say, is Adrian Mullen, but the heartbeat that's always there is probably TJ, and he just doesn't look to be moving at 100%, and he'll need to be against Ballygunner, because he'll need to be able to defend as well as he can attack.
And Joe Butler says here, as Colin Fennelly said after the game, Ballyhale were too casual in the second half. And it is going to be a battle of the cousins now in the All-Ireland semi-final, because the Mahonys and the Reeds are, of course, related. But let's talk about the Munster Club final at the weekend on Saturday. Ballygunner 123, Ballyea 17 points. So Pádraig Mahoney scored 10 of the points, 4 of those from play. Another brilliant display from him. Patrick Fitzgerald, this young virtuoso player, surely we'll see him in senior Waterford colours this year, this coming season, even though he's only 18. Desi Hutchinson with 4, Kevin Mahoney and Mikey Mahoney with a couple, and Peter Hogan, he chipped in with a point. Tony Kelly got 11, 4 of those from play. Niall Deasy and Pierce Lillis got a couple each, and James Murphy, the captain, and Mossy Gavin got 1 each. But to be fair to Ballygunner, it's the first time since anyone's done back-to-back in Munster since 1999. Their 4th club title in Munster, 3rd for this group. Really, really strong performance, especially the last quarter, which they won by 8 points to 2.
Big time. When the game is there to be won, they just seem to be able to find another gear. They're kind of like the Crokes footballers, really. If it's tight coming down that stretch, they just seem to be able to suffocate the life out of you. And Ballyea just weren't able to put their foothold in the game at all near the end there. And I have to say to Ballyea, they definitely banished any kind of demons or anything from last year, made it really, really competitive. One thing I particularly liked from Ballyea, and I haven't really seen them do it too much before, but say we're just say the ball is on the right-hand touchline and there's 10 to 12 players there and it's so congested and a lad gets the ball and a lot of time they'll go back into the traffic or they'll hit it down the wing. I just loved how Ballyea, sometimes even no look, it was like an 80-yard switch to play to the other side of the field where all the space was. And I think it was something that obviously talked about beforehand because there was always somebody there, even though, the way everyone gets sucked towards the play, even if you're on the wing, you get sucked to the middle. It was like they always had an out ball on the far wing and it helped to stretch Ballygunner and I suppose didn't allow them to maybe put their defensive structure in place maybe as quickly as would have before. And obviously, Tony delivered some great scores, particularly in that first half. But Ballygunner were just able to squeeze them in the second half. And when you're adding in to an All-Ireland winning team, when you're adding in a player like Patrick Fitzgerald, who, he's going to get attention, but there's Desi and the three Mahonys in the forward line. They're going to command attention as well. So he's able to profit off that, and he finished the goal really, really cool. I was even just looking back at his run this morning. He timed his run so well, made sure a lot of players end up too far ahead of the ball receiving the pass or too far behind. He timed it perfectly, finished really well. Just what you were saying about him playing for Waterford this year, I would still pull the reins in a small, but I wouldn't be playing him in the league too much. I probably would play him, a bit in championship, but I wouldn't be giving him too much too soon. I'll put it to you that way. But he was ultimately one of the difference makers. And Desi, from what I could see from the television anyway, definitely looked to play a bit of a different role as well and was out the pitch a good bit more. And some of his scores actually came from out the pitch as well. And I think that might have been to do with not having that predictability of the two of them inside. They're going to play the two of them inside. And I don't think it was that case from what I could see anyway.
Yeah, well, early on in the game, it seemed that he definitely was inside because he had a couple of points up on the board in jig time and felt a little bit sorry for Paul Flanagan because there's not much he could do. The ball going in was so good. It was into space. He's marking a racehorse. And obviously you can't mark Desi on both sides. You'd love to be able, but sure, you can only mark a player on one side. And I don't think there's anything he could have done about those scores early on. And to keep him to 4 wasn't bad going. And even Flanagan had to go off for a while because he got a shot in the eye. He had blood definitely coming from the head and had to wear a different jersey as the game went on. But I think just Ballygunner, they can mix it anyway these days. So, and there's all the talk about a couple of years ago, Darragh Sullivan even mentioned it afterwards. People questioned our character and so on and so forth. And definitely, we talked about it. Can they win a tight game? Heavy conditions, all that kind of stuff. They'd lost big games in Munster in recent seasons. So, it was only natural to look at that and analyse that and say, are they able to mix it? And they're definitely able to mix it now and win tight games and be able for any sort of a physical challenge like they were against Napiershik the last day out. But they're the master of every art. They obviously work the ball brilliantly up the field. They've got excellent players in every position. They've got inter-county spine to the team, past and present. But they also are able to mix the dark arts too. Whether it's dragging a player down onto the ground if they're running through, as we saw with Barry Coughlin against Killarwan a few weeks ago, whether it's whatever happened with Lockmore Castellini last year, whether it's even taking turns to foul Tony Kelly in this match. Like there was a couple of people who probably picked up yellow cards getting stuck into him and giving him a little bit of treatment. I'm not saying any of this critically. I'm saying they look at it and think, how can we chip away at the other team? How can we target their strengths? And they go after or target their weaknesses or batter their strengths, hammer to hammer. I just think they're brilliant at finding every little angle all over the pitch.
Yeah, the dark art stuff is Andrew just says they're the masters of the dark stuff. And I think that's something they probably, and might sound a bit stupid to say, I think that's something to take pride in at this stage because basically, after Borrisalee beat them, they weren't maybe cute enough, people would have said. They didn't, delve into that kind of dark area enough. But now when the opportunity is there and when they have to do something, they will do it. And it's not the first time that they've shared yellows before. I remember them doing it. I think they might have done it even in the early stages of the Munster final against Kilmacud last year. They're a well-oiled machine in the sense that every part moves in perfect synchronicity with the next part. And it just, when they're in full flow, they're beautiful to watch. And the funny thing about Harry Ruddle's goal in the All-Ireland final, is like they've totally built on that finishing ability now. Like they finish games, like they kill you in that last 5 or 10 minutes. And that's why, like, and I know we'll talk about it in a week or 10 days, but I'd imagine Ballyhale are going to have to be ahead if they're going to win that semi-final, because if you're asking me now who's going to finish stronger, at the moment I'd say Ballygunner are going to finish stronger every day of the week.
And you know, you're talking about how they finish down the stretch, and I'm just looking at when they use their substitutes. And we know obviously there's going to be a little bit of added time at the end of every game, but they unloaded their bench in the 55th minute, 56th, 58th, 62nd. And these are all good players: Harry Ruddle, Billy O'Keefe, Tim O'Sullivan, Darragh O'Keefe. They have either experience, or they have quality, or they have both. And those last few minutes, those lads all made a little bit of an impact. Obviously, we know what Harry Ruddle did before, but they're very much targeting, I suppose, that area of the game to make sure that they finish strong. You know, the whole cliche about having finishers on the pitch, which in some ways is to plumose the lads who are mad to start.
Yeah.
Put a little bit of a different spin on it.
Make it sound better.
Yeah. But like Paddy Levy seemed to be, now look, other people might have a different read on it, but watching on TV, to me it seemed Paddy Levy was marking Tony Kelly for long spells. Then the two of them got tangled around midfield, and I think Tony definitely did ham it up a little bit in terms of how Levy was swinging out of him. They were both probably at it, but he got a yellow card, and then it seemed to be Shane O'Sullivan for an awful lot of it. And we talked about it the other day. I was saying they put obviously the speedster in Kelly on Shane O'Sullivan's side, and you were kind of suggesting, and I think it was a fair enough kind of summation to say they wouldn't allow that matchup to occur, but they actually did allow it to occur. And you know, O'Sullivan had another good game, but of course Kelly had a big impact too. But you know, the way last year there was 17 points in it, this year there was 9 points in it, and I think Kelly probably is worth about that 8 points, maybe even slightly more, and it kind of explains the deficit from last year. But late on in the game, and look, this is no criticism of Kelly because he's a brilliant player and performed so well for both club and county over the years. But a couple of his efforts did go a little bit awry. I think there was 2 frees and maybe 2 from play. And look, basically, he was the only man who was going to do it, really. And unfortunately, when 1 or 2 went askew, it kind of meant that the writing was on the wall.
Kind of looked like he looked frustrated at the end because, you know, he wants to be able to dictate play, and Levy had stifled him pretty well to an extent. And not being smart, there's a psychology to it as well about getting inside a lad's head and annoying him. I don't know if you've ever played a match where a lad is just always there and you can't really shake him off. And even when you do get a shot at goal, maybe then you're just not as free in the head, or you're kind of, you know what I mean? You're just kind of a bit annoyed or whatever. You don't feel as loose as you normally would. He definitely, he could have frustrated figure at the end. And that's a funny one. Like, that's a culmination of a whole game leading to, you know, maybe being inside his head at the most important time at the end of the game when every one of those shots needed to go over. So there's definitely probably something in that as well. But, you know, just from a Ballygunner point of view, you'd have to say they're better now, I would say, than they've ever been, and have that seasoned look about them that when you're coming down the home stretch, you think they're going to deliver, and they know they're going to deliver.
Yeah, well, there's something about getting across the line once, as they did with the the All-Ireland title last year. It just frees you up, I think, psychologically from then on. And you know, the way that you have this white line fever with a lot of teams, they certainly don't have that. And I can't wait for the semi-final. But just a reminder, we're brought to you by OurGameRetro.com. Use the promo code OurGame and you get 15% off. What a Christmas present to give one of those jerseys, or maybe a zip up top like this. There's plenty of other ones, and some real old school Dublin, Kerry and other counties out there as well. The comments keep flying in. 2 semi-finals in Croke Park, December the 18th is what Culcullen's blood is saying. Ballygunner are some operators, in fairness. I see them winning the All-Ireland again. And look, very few would bet.
Here's one for you, Shane. I'll ask you quickly. Do your power rankings change at the moment? I'm only talking about the top 2.
They do, yeah. No, I'd have Ballygunner as number 1. But even remember when we were doing the power rankings a few weeks ago, I initially was pushing for Ballygunner as first, but I accepted that fair enough they should go to second because their route was that bit harder. Yeah. So now that they've negotiated the route, they've
negotiated the route, and they've negotiated it in style, and they're playing more consistent stuff, I would say, than Ballyhale. If you look at Ballyhale's last 2 games, the first half was not good against Naas, and that's a lot to do with what Naas threw at them. The second half yesterday was not good against Kilmacud. And again, you can say that's what Kilmacud threw at them. But Ballygunner had a tough first half against Na Piarsaigh and were able to bounce back and had I would say, a really even performance yesterday. So, yeah, I'd have Ballygunner number 1 as well. I think some of the viewers were asking there, I'd be surprised if Brian Butler, if he's not fit, if potentially he doesn't come back in for an All-Ireland semi-final. And obviously, Ronan Corcoran probably will be back fit. And going into last year, they won't want any excuse. Going into last year's All-Ireland final, they had a couple of injuries. Even Darren Mullen was carrying an injury coming into the game. One of the Corcorans was missing as well. I think it was Dara, was it? So they won't want any excuses, and I hope neither team have any excuses, because that is going to be some game to look forward to on the eve of Christmas.
Yeah, Johnny Appleseed says TK is still best in the country. That team on that day had a good chance of beating Ballyhale, but Ballygunner are so strong. Okay, let's move on to the Munster Intermediate final, which went on over the weekend. Moycullen of Limerick beat Roscrea of Tipperary 122-018. They were both wearing their county jerseys to stop the clash. So huge victory for Moycullen here, who've been coached by Owen Breslan, who, as I pointed out last week, I had said previously that he was in the middle of a 3-month ban, but it was only a 1-game ban. So he was back on the sideline there. But as a lad who was in school in, I think, the year ahead of me, and never been shy of an old word here and there when we have him on air, I'm sure he won't mind too much. He knows to be nothing in that at all. But the first Limerick club to win that title in 11 years, I think. So that's a big one for another Limerick team. And I think it was also at the junior level as well. Well, I suppose St. Kieran's got to the final, didn't actually win it. But a big win for Moycullen. They probably shouldn't be at intermediate level anyway.
No, probably not. Saw Owen Breslan kind of crediting Limerick's strength and conditioning was a lot to do with. He said that was a lot to do with the victory. You know, Larkin Lyons was brilliant from centre back from the few bits of highlights I saw. But like Roscrea were All Ireland favourites probably coming into this game. From a long way out after they won Tipperary. So I wouldn't say it probably is a bit of a surprise, but it's probably how dominant they were was what surprised me most. And they were much the better team, you'd have to say, from what I saw. And they'll fancy themselves. So what are we looking at in the All Ireland Intermediate at the moment? We're looking at Turin, Moycullen, Intermediate in. This is really interesting. So it's
Brer Trim is coming out of Leinster.
Brer Trim this weekend, and I'm not sure if the Ulster has been played yet. It might have been, but it's going to be a lot of new faces.
Leitrim of Down.
Like it was Banagher last year, as Nisha said in the comments last week. Like, so, some fascinating ones there, and maybe Turin are probably favourites. I'd say at the moment probably to win it now, just because they've been there and done it at this stage.
Oh, I put Moycullen down as favourites now as well. And this comment from Hurling1234 is partly why. Interestingly, 2 players from Moycullen have All-Ireland medals from 2018 and 2020 from Limerick, Larkin Lyons and Andrew Latouche Cosgrave, which is valuable experience at that level. And the other thing, did you see Latouche Cosgrave's assist for Ed Doyle's goal towards the end of the game? He was soloing in from the end line. His hurley got removed from his hand, and he did a lovely little kick pass with the outside of the boot, which found Doyle at the edge of the area, and a fairly emphatic finish to go with it as well. So that was an excellent goal there. But just 14 months on from being relegated in Limerick, Moycullen are 1 game from Croke Park. And they're probably, like, often you see teams that go really far in these competitions, they're teams that never should have dropped down a rank in their county championships anyway. So it's probably something of a false position for Moycullen, but that's not to take away from what they're doing, because I would have said the same about Roscrea, really, wouldn't I? That they should be up at senior level.
Yeah, exactly. So, there are 2 teams that probably should. 2 teams that have been senior. Like all my youth growing up, we had the Midland Tribune at home, and it was you were reading Roscrea senior results every summer or whatever. So, like, is this did they get relegated last year? Am I right in saying when the structure changed, was it a small bit?
Yeah, I think so. Jeez, funny, you think I'd know that off the top of my head, but for whatever reason...
I'd know most years, but the last couple of years with COVID has totally melted my head as regards what years things happened in. Just it's a kind of a funny one. But it has been kind of commonplace for teams that have went on a run in either junior or intermediate. Like Dunshaughlin were obviously beaten, and we'll get into that in a bit. But they were beaten in the Leinster Intermediate Football Final. But again, there's a big powerhouse at senior level dropping back and going on a run like they should go on, really.
And do you think your brain overheats because of that big duvet sitting on your head?
I tell you, that duvet is fair handy when you're standing outside and it's whatever it is when you're walking the dog and it's absolutely freezing at night. It's a handy thing to have.
Marco Dwyer scored 15 points for Moycullen in that game. Ed Doyle won one. Donegal O'Donnell a couple of points. And then several other lads got one each. Luke Cashin had 11 for Ross Gray. Conor Sheedy and Evan Fitzpatrick, they had 3 apiece. Hugh Paddy says that the Inter has been a great championship too, with some great games and upsets so far. Richard Hogan says, I wouldn't rule out Trim or Bray for this either. We're certainly not doing that entirely. Ballygunner won back-to-back Ulster Junior Hurling Club Championships, completing the second one over the weekend, beating St. Kieran's of Limerick by 10 points, 3-12 to 0-11. And this is the game where Shane Beston scored 3-3. This is the man who was getting married. And I just read a little bit about his background. So this is in the Examiner. 32-year-old Beston, who got married on Saturday, missed out due to injury last year. He said there was never a doubt he would play. And this is a quotation from Shane. Everyone was saying to me during the week, will you play? I was always going to play. We put in so much effort throughout the year. I owed it to the lads. And I had the blessing of my wonderful wife to let me play. The wedding was a great celebration with all my friends and family. I enjoyed it immensely. And I was lucky that Emma is so understanding. That was dedicated to her, really. I'm so proud. We left Kinsale around 10:30 this morning. Yesterday, obviously, was our wedding day. So I wasn't thinking fully on the game until this morning. Maybe that helped. I wasn't too nervous coming into it, not overthinking it. I don't think I've ever scored 3 goals in a game. You couldn't make it up. I was just talking to my father and he said it was right or over stuff, and it was. Every ball just seemed to break for me for some reason. The boys were there working hard. I was just getting the breaks. So they're going to be up against the winner of Horswood against Commercials. And you've had days like that where just the ball haunts you some days. I remember I was away for a friend's wedding in Spain. This could have been the guts of 10 years ago, maybe 8 years ago or something like that. And I had said to the management, look, I'm under awful pressure here. I don't know if I should play this game. I don't know if I can see straight in front of me. And whatever way it was in the Lashans Arraign. I think it was up in, where was it, against Nave Marnoak. The ball haunted me. It just kept coming to me. So I ended up having, what seemed like a good game, but it was just pure fluke. The ball just kept coming to me. You've had days like that.
Yeah, it does. It follows you around some days, and then there's other days you could follow it around for an hour and it wouldn't come near you. And
you could be sprinting constantly. You can't get near.
And it's funny, like when you're thinking, I'm just thinking about one of those types of games when they do happen, and they're very rare. They happen to the elite lads very often, I'd say. Just when a ball comes near you and you try out your hurl and you flick it and it just ends up in your hand, like, you know what I mean? Something that you'd normally be poking at for a couple of minutes or something, trying to get it in your hand. But it's amazing to have that the day after your wedding. It really, really is. And he just said, and it is a lot to do, I'd say, with not overthinking it, as he said himself there. It just, like, I always think sometimes when we grow up, we kind of go away too much from when we were kids. Like when we were kids, we didn't think about matches too often. You just went out and hurled and you were instinctive and you did your best kind of stuff. You get a bit older, maybe you have a few bad experiences and start overthinking it a little bit and you don't maybe enjoy it as much. But when you just go out, and I played Senior B with Burr this year, didn't think about it too much, looked after myself well enough, but didn't think about it too much, just went out and enjoyed it, absolutely loved it. You know what I mean? I scored an own goal in a match, which I'd be like this. I kicked it in, or what did I do? I did a fresh air, and then I walked the ball into the net. And if that was like 5 years ago, or 5 or 6 years ago, I was done. Like that was me done for the game, gone, be running away from the ball. But just like, all right, we go again and whatever. We're down by about 10 points. We ended up actually coming back. But sometimes I think you veer
coming back to win or lose.
Come back to win, yeah. We won by 1 or 2, I think, after. But sometimes you go too far away from your youth and you stop enjoying it. Like Shane is at that sort of age where I'd say he just went out and enjoyed it. He didn't think too much about it, and didn't do him any harm. He'd be a marked man the next day, though.
He will. It's called the flow state. That's a psychology word for it. Says DG.
Lads, I could have said, with due respect to our viewers, I could have started talking about the flow state, and I'd be getting a gun sign back to me in the comments here. I'm not gonna plow Mossy with flow state. I'm gonna talking about it in more agricultural terms.
But on this point, though, I remember a few years ago, I was having a bit of a crisis of confidence with the first touch. And it was almost like taking every ball too seriously and being focused to the nth degree on every ball. So to get around it, I mean, I would never say I was the sweetest hurler, but the way to get around it, I found, was I was going out for pucks all the time. But what I started to do was try to do nonchalant touches, like to just flick the ball up to myself and not try to be too focused on it, and just get back to, when you're a kid and you just go around pucking with a few lads and girls or whatever, and you're always doing little tippy-tappy stuff, and it's just really natural sort of hurling where it's relaxed at your ease. and the complete opposite of probably how seriously I had been taking it. And it definitely helped out, and it helps address the issue.
I was going to ask you, did you do like what Roy McAvoy did in Tin Cup? His psychologist / coach, he'd got the yips, he'd lost it completely. Real talented amateur player. So he got him to take all his change, put it in his right-hand pocket, got him to put his hat on backwards, pull up one leg, and he got him to hit a shot. And he'd forgotten about the yips, and all he could think about was how stupid he looked. So he hit a perfect shot because he stopped thinking about the shot itself. It's funny, like different things work for different people.
Yeah, for sure. Best in won a county in football, UCC in 2011, says John O'Sullivan. Mick Agri-Verney, says Richard Hogan.
Oh, I tell you, boy, yeah, good agriculture. Hurling's an agricultural game. There's a lot of science to it, but it's agricultural in its essence.
Yeah, were you, I suppose, would you be one of these players where beforehand, you know, when you're pucking around, probably you and another lad, you're 10 yards away from each other and just pucking the ball over and back during the warm-up. Were you the sort of person that people avoided? They wanted to stay away from you because whatever way you pucked the ball, you probably reddened the fingers off lads. I got abused for that an awful lot, that I'd absolutely throw the ball at them. So they wanted to avoid me in the warm-up.
Not so much now, because and the older I got, the less serious I take the warm-up, to be honest with you. And you do what you have to do. But like I remember we played an under-21 final one year, and I missed every ball, I'd say, in the warm-up. Every single ball in the warm-up. And I just you were young, so you never thought about it. But I didn't miss too many in the game, like, you know what I mean? And you adopt that approach as well. You don't want it to be perfect, probably, in the warm-up either. It's funny you say that about driving the ball or whatever. Apparently Henry Shefflin was the worst for it. Like, apparently, like, you were 20 meters away in a drill and he struck at you like he was striking for goal, because Gary Hanafy came back to bird training after playing Railway Cup at Leinster, and he started doing this, like what Henry was doing, and you ran away from him from drills, like, because you spent your evening out in the field, the back field, like, collecting balls that he was drilling at you. But a lot of the best players, and you know, if you look at them, they try to recreate what the match is going to be, or even over exaggerate what the match is going to be, so that when a ball comes at them in a match and it's not as hard, they're ready for it. But no, that wouldn't be me now. No, I wouldn't have taken it that seriously. No.
Okay, well, look, I'm going to put up a little clip here. So it's from one of our coaching clinics in recent times. We had a great one on Saturday at UCD. It was a football one. But this is actually one from the Nace one that we had a little bit before that. And we're going to have more of these coming after Christmas. And if your club is interested in hosting, do get on to us, because we're happily chatting away with different clubs, and we're going to have a nice little schedule of them coming in 2023. But here's a clip of Mike Casey chatting with Dan Shanahan and also with Richie Power about defending and creating space and the importance of someone making a run in the lead up to a goal.
In this situation, if you've a centre forward coming through and goal, two of you are playing two-man full forward line, what do you want to happen? Or what don't you want to happen?
You want to create space.
Yeah.
So he's coming in this time.
He's coming straight through.
He's coming straight through here.
He's coming straight through here.
If I see that lad coming here, and Richie's there, I'm getting out here. I'm bringing my corner back way out. Sometimes the run that forwards create is better than the lad scoring the goal, if that makes sense to me. I'm standing here and I see Brick or John Milan coming down the middle like a racehorse Milan. I'm getting out of his effing way, because I know Milan. I know what his intentions is. Like Richie says, is to get that goal. So I'm out. I'm creating that space. I'm bringing him. If the back doesn't come with me, he's going to give it to me. Especially coming off his left hand, because I know he's coming off his left side. If he's coming this way, it'll be different, because he's coming off his bad side. Milan is coming down. I know, boom, bang, boom. For me, and I'm a big fan of this, the fella that creates the space is better than the lad that's scoring the goal, because he made the space for the goal. Does that make sense to you? That if Richie's here and Richie doesn't get it and he F's up, and I'm outside for the ball as well. So Milan's important this minute. I'm out here for the ball again. I'm always on the move. Cornerback could have went with him, didn't give it to me. Next minute broke, I'm out here or out there over the back. He's such a nonsense. Boys, the best fullback in the country himself. If he's knocking him, if he sees me behind him, I'm always, as Richie said, always on the move. He's turning his back. That's the best goalie behind him in the country, saying left or right. You know, so it's so hard. Just creating the space for me is so key if the lad is coming down the middle. Sorry, a forward, in my opinion, might make 10 runs in a game and might only get one ball, and that's the ball that could end up winning the game. So the forward has to continue making those runs. 5 times out of 6 he mightn't get the ball, and some players will start getting frustrated and kind of say, "Jeez, I'm not making the next run because I'm not going to get it." It's the next run that you'll get it, and it'll make the difference. Like as Dan was saying, I do exactly the same there. I'd be getting out of the way, and I'd also be kind of coming back around on a loop, just in case my man decides to say, right, the danger's there. I still have to be in a goal scoring position. There's no point me rocking and out there and 2 men tackling whoever's coming through the middle. So I'd come out in kind of a loop, and I'd be kind of coming back in, ready for the hand pass if my man decides to go and tackle. But I would make that run 9 times, 10 times, 11 times. It might be the 11th time or the 12th time I get it. Like, if I create the space and we get 2 or 3 goals coming through the middle, great. And then I might get one towards the end. But it's very, very important that the forward, I spoke about space up there. It's about creating space for yourself, but also about creating it for your teammates as well.
Okay, so that was a brilliant coaching clinic that we had recently in Naas. Just a reminder, if you do want to get some of the more extended videos, so we had a couple from the weekend, Stephen Poacher, we have ones coming up from Gerard Brennan, obviously Mike Casey, Dan Shanahan, Richie Power, so on and so forth. We've loads of them. Go to patreon.com/OurGame. There's plenty of them up there that'll only ever be up there. Michael, what do we want to move on to next? Do we want to talk about the Ulster final?
Yeah, I think we do, because obviously I think if Slaughtneil had won, it would have been the first time where the same 4 teams were in the All-Ireland semi-finals in back-to-back seasons. But Dunloy, in fairness, ripped up that script. I think I see a quote from the manager saying, that, I'm paraphrasing here, but they were almost like a noose hanging around their neck. Slaughtneil had been to Dunloy, but they bided their time. I kind of reckon that they were 12 months waiting for another crack at them, and that they'd built quite a bit in that time and become a better side and kind of gone through Antrim pretty well. But this was the game that they were waiting for, and they didn't disappoint when it really, really mattered.
Yeah, it's you don't see too many own goals, but obviously it was a desperate one for us, Doherty. So that was an own goal. But it was those 2 goals in the first half that set up Dunloy. And it obviously ends a 13-year wait for Ulster Glory. Finished up 2-12 to 16 points. So very low scoring. At this time of the year, you're seeing more low-scoring games, of course, understandably. And the Athletic Grounds is an absolutely fabulous place to have a club match because it's just that perfect size and you're completely enclosed by the stands. It's just a really, really cool place. But Dunloy very much had to resist the fight back here because Slaughtneil scored 8 of the first 10 points in the second half. And given the relationship between the 2 clubs and the winning dynamic for Slaughtneil within that, you would have thought that they would have got over the line. But 4 wides in the last 10 minutes, that probably killed their chances. And Gregory O'Kane, who manages Dunloy, said afterwards, we're a very proud club, but we were also Antrim men. We're Antrim people. Antrim puts a lot of effort in, but just to get ourselves and then an Antrim team to the top of the tree. To be fair to Slaughtneil, they've brought the Ulster Championship to an unbelievable level. We needed to go to that level to get over the line, and thankfully we did. So brilliant win for them, and they're up against St. Thomas's next on the 18th of December. Just the scorers, other than that own goal, Conal Cunning, he scored 3, Nigel Elliott got 1-1, and a few other lads pitched in with a point as well. But that's a great win for Dunloy. Massive
win, huge win for them, because it's just getting that monkey off their back that Slaughtneil have been for the last couple of years. And Slaughtneil have been reasonably convincing winners in some of those games over the last couple of years. This is a bit worrying, as Cullen's Blood says here. Dunloy only scoring 12 points and winning will be a concern for me. And obviously one of the goals would have been very preventable. So
but Thomas had scored 115 in their county final as well. At this time of the year, it's not really about what score you put up. It's just as long as you're 1 point up on the opposition by the end of it.
I hear you, but when they go and play a big game in Croke Park, as they will be in a couple of weeks, they're going to be need to score.
But isn't that the whole point, though? They didn't play this game at Croke Park. Thomas's didn't play their game at Croke Park. Different venues open up different types of games. Yeah, and surely it will suit the likes of Keelan Malloy to be at Croke Park.
Yeah, but Thomas's are capable of it, I suppose, is the flip point of that. They're capable of putting up a big score. Maybe the question mark is there in Dunloy. And listen, that's a question that hopefully that they'll answer.
Stop writing them off.
Well, I'd say we both wrote them off in our power rankings when you look at it. but they definitely obviously will be big underdogs going into it. But I remember being in Parnell, was it 2017 or 2018? 2017, I think, when it was David Sherry, the cornerback, came up for Thomas's with the last minute point to beat Cushendall at the time. So like they won't be taking them for granted anyway, definitely not. And listen, from a Dunloy point of view, you're still avoiding what we would count as the best two teams in the country. And, you know, so it's an opportunity for them. And they're not coming up against number 1 or 2. They're coming up against probably number 3. And I'm sure they'll give it a good rattle. And as you say, with the likes of Keelan Malloy, Colin Cunning, they've had brilliant years already this year in Croke Park. They've done it in Croke Park already this year, winning the McDonough, and were outstanding in doing that. Cunning in particular in that first half against Kerry was unmarkable. So they are capable of putting up those scores for their county. It'll just be interesting to see if they can do it for the club now. But huge win for them. Maybe we're been a tad negative or whatever about what's coming. What they've just achieved is absolutely huge. We would have had a great history with Dunloy and Burr. Played them in 2 All-Ireland club finals. They should have beaten us in '95 in a storm on Patrick's Day. It ended up that Regan got a point to level at 9 each, and we beat them well in the replay. But they've been a mainstay in Ulster and All-Ireland stages for a long, long time, and they'd be delighted to be back at that stage again.
Will I bring up our power rankings that we most recently had? Now, this is a long time ago at this stage. I can't exactly remember when it is, but you're just for the crack, will I bring it up?
I don't think it's that long ago. I think I'm going to say it was before.
Look, I'm trying to buy us a little bit of wiggle.
No, I'm going to be honest.
This was ages ago.
Like John Costello says, if you were wrong, you hold up your hands and admit you were wrong. I think it was the weekend before Naas and Ballyhale. I think, if I'm right in saying, I think that was it.
Oh, sure, that was. God,
it's a while.
World has changed. Yeah, so we had Ballyhale, Ballygunner, St. Thomas's, and I think we'd stay firm on that.
I'd be changing Ballygunner and Ballyhale as we said.
Sorry, I mean as the top three. I mean as the top three.
Yeah, top three. Yeah.
Sully 180 is saying it was about 3 weeks ago. Na Piarsaigh, I would still contend that they're probably the 4th best team in Ireland.
Yeah, I think the form has worked out pretty well. They're the only team that I've seen really properly rattle Ballygunner in the last couple of years, I would say. So yeah, no, I'd probably stand over that as well. Yeah,
I think Naas would have to jump up a nice few places there, wouldn't they?
I think Kilmacud potentially would jump up a place, maybe too.
Yeah, wouldn't you love to see a bit of a round robin between Ballyea, Schlockneil and Kilmacud, just to see how all those matches would go?
Just for our amusement. There's nothing on the line. What's on the line is like 4th or 5th place in the OurGame power rankings. It doesn't get much more elite than that.
I'd also love to see Na Piarsaigh against Ballyhale.
Yeah, it'd be a belter of a game. Yeah, there's a lot of games there that you'd really like to see. It was funny. Who were we chatting to? Was it Chrissy we were chatting to last week, who said he'd love to see that Champions League style format at All Ireland stages? Yeah, which is great. On the flip side, for someone like Chrissy, he'd probably get a little bit of downtime now before he goes back in with Derry maybe, and will come back maybe refreshed for another season, because he was obviously one of the best football cornerbacks in the country last year, and I'm sure he'll be looking to make another big year again next year.
And Richard Hogan says Naas flip with St. Mullins and Dunloy flip with Schlockneil. Also at the weekend, the Ulster Intermediate hurling final, Leitrim of Down 220, Middletown Nafina 20 points. So that's the Down team through, and a glorious Ulster title win for them. Conor McCrickard and PJ Davidson hit the net for the winners, and they'll play Mayo's Turin in the All-Ireland semi-final, as we were saying before. Now, let's get on to a little bit of football. But before we do, I had mentioned that we'd had Stephen Poacher at our coaching clinic over the weekend. So I'm going to put up a little bit of a clip. This is just a short 2-minute one. It's in the midst of him doing a lot of drills with some of the different players from the Ballantyre under-21 county title winning team. There's a little bit of wind in the clip, so you'll have to just make do with that. But this is him talking to coaches and about putting teams and players in situations repetitively. And the overarching topic is about pressing.
You'll identify players in your team who are really effective at pressing, okay? Maybe others that aren't. But how are you going to fix that? If you can't press effectively, how are you going to fix that? What do you have to do? What do we do now? You have to practice, okay? Practice, preparation, performance, okay? You have to practice, okay? You have to put them into those situations repetitively. The last wee two pair, the young lads, the wee lad just switched off. He can draw it, he can attract it to the ball. And what happened? The runner He just get in behind, create a wee +1, and he's out. Okay? So it's about switching off. That's switching off. Okay? So you're trying to get the players into the mindset, press the man, press the ball, get contact with the ball carrier, but also get contact with the runner. You know? The George here have been talking about the Dublin teams in the past. Dublin teams in the past are so effective at tracking runners. They were unbelievable. And a large part of that is probably down to what as well? Conditioning. Okay, when you're really well conditioned, you can play like that. If you're not well conditioned, no point in pressing if you have 3 boys that can't press, okay? That they're not conditioned to press. So conditioning plays a large part in it. Okay?
Yeah, and you know what? There was so much that was being coached about football from him, Paul Galvin, and Gerard Bredin, but it just related to hurling. And, you know, I found that that's the same with the hurling ones we've done. They relate to football as well, that you could easily port these ideas across. And it is, I suppose it's down to the fact that the same size pitch, same amount of people on there, there is no offside rule, and it's a pretty physical game, that it's no surprise that the two codes cross over so much and that you now see managers jumping from one side to the other.
Well, it's like this. If we're taking like bits of information and, you know, practices and principles from basketball, which is played on a court, where the court is like tiny in comparison to a J pitch, I suppose it only stands to reason that there would be a lot of football principles that would carry over to hurling. And like a lot of the terminology that you would have heard in maybe football maybe a decade ago, you start to hear it an awful lot more in hurling now. Stuff that you would have heard in football a couple of years ago is starting to come in vogue now. So yeah, I'd always say any of the good coaches and managers would always say that they could pick up, you know, anything from anyone or any sport, and particularly like hurling can pick from football. Football can definitely pick from hurling as well. So listen, the lads were great by all accounts, and it's just great to pick their minds and see what things that they like to focus on most. And you know, like even like, I'm sure you'll be putting out lots more different videos and different bits and pieces, but it's real high-end stuff, like, in fairness, and you can pick up so much. You can pick up so much for the highest end as in inter-county, but even your under-7s or your nursery, there's bits and pieces that you can get them moving or get them thinking in a way that will help them when they grow up.
And Paul Galvin was going into serious levels of detail. It was real technical coaching in terms of like how you pass the ball to another person with the hand pass and the kick pass, really good. And Gerard Brennan actually, with his one, like there's always great fun with Gerard as well, outside of the fact that he's obviously a very serious football man, but he was getting the coaches to sort of replicate what he was trying to do with a player, just to sort of get that understand. Like if you're going to be the person trying to tell the players what they need to be doing and how they need to be doing it, you almost have to test it out yourself just to make sure that you yourself understand what you're trying to get across, and even go through the difficulty of trying to figure it out yourself. And that will obviously help you as a coach to sort of bring it on to the next level.
I think you legitimize yourself as well, though, by doing that. And plus you show, if I can do it, then there's no reason why you can do it. Whereas I look at, I'm talking about bluffers or spoofers here, but lads would tell you to be going doing something, and it could be the most convoluted thing ever, and it mightn't even make sense to them. And then obviously it doesn't make sense to you, and it breaks down, and you know, you get sent for a lap or something, you know, prehistoric like that, even though it's something that they probably don't even understand themselves. So I definitely think as well as a coach, to throw yourself into these situations, show that you can do it, show that you can make a mistake while doing it as well, will only endear yourself more to your players, I would have said.
Yeah, Kilmacud Crokes were unbelievably dominant against the Downs of Westmeath in the Leinster football final. It was 1-9 to a point at half time. You know, that was all she wrote. And when you consider that Crokes conceded just 4 points in the entirety of the game against Port Arlington the previous day out, there was no real opportunity for the Downs to make a comeback here. Now, they stayed going and they took the bad look off the scoreline and finished 112 to 8 points. Now, I don't know, is Robbie Brennan going to be particularly perturbed that his team managed just 3 points in the second half? They saw it out. That was the main thing. And they're going to be facing Newcastle West or Cairns O'Rahilly in the next round. And I don't think anyone is going to be expecting whichever Munster side prevails to get through there. But fair play to the Downs for continuing to go. They obviously had injuries there in the first half. Mark Kelly, he had to go off just before the half time. That's your centre back, your joint captain. That's a big blow. But I have to say the goal early on in the game, the Downs got to be unbelievably disappointed. There was a ball about being delivered inside, and Trevor Martin, the goalkeeper, I can't remember who was doing the marking inside on Shane Cunningham, but a ball travelled maybe 20 or 30 yards in. Now, I totally understand the marker trying to play Cunningham from the front, because if a ball is popped in front, obviously it's very easy for the forward, if you mark him from behind, to just turn and do something with the ball, whether it's recycle it or take your score. So obviously he wanted to stay in front, but the keeper does have to clean house, because the ball kind of dropped in the square, probably about 4 yards out, and Cunningham's able to go backwards and knock it into the net. A keeper needs to attack that ball, come out in front. I mean, it obviously cost Crokes in the hurling, one of these high balls not being dealt with. So would you blame the defender for being caught in front and therefore he can't get involved? Or would you say, well, look, we expect the goalkeeper to deal with anything that goes in over the top and the defender to try and mark from the front, if that's what you've decided beforehand as a team?
I doubt that was that close to the goal. I doubt that was the principle somehow. Like, ideally,
you don't think the defender wasn't planning to defend from the front? I think that happens constantly.
Yeah, but and the keeper was going to defend it if it went over his head.
I think that it's expected that a goalkeeper will deal with a high ball in.
But I know what you're saying, but that close to the goal, I don't know. As a defender, I think totally committing yourself to the front. You could be side on, or you could be just on his shoulder. You be side by side with him, but you want to make sure you don't get swiveled or turned as well. But listen, I hate seeing this type of thing happening again. To me, I think it's a much safer thing to have the defender goal side or on his shoulder. And I don't think, like, he's trying to read the ball. But as Andrew says there, he's probably not marking his man. If you get me,
this is how you're told to mark now. I genuinely do think in a lot of situations that you're told to sort of stand in front of your man, but try and have hands on him. And if you get knocked out, it's an unfortunate one for the defender because the ball probably goes into the one area where Cunningham can therefore get onto it. But I do think that the keeper, when the ball is 4 yards out, needs to be able to take man ball the whole lot and not let that ball in past him. And look, I'm not trying to single him out. It's obviously a tough one. It's a wet day, hard conditions, all that kind of stuff. But I do think you need to let forwards know there's only one person who owns that square, and that's me.
Well, see, my thing about that is if the ball does come in, a keeper needs to put that much of a fear of God into a forward that you actually don't want to go in there, or you're going to be cleaved if you do go in there. And if you're able to get a flick on something, then fair play. I'd like to chat to someone like Chrissy about this, because if just when you were saying there, like Chrissy McCaig, I remember watching a clip back of him marking Darren McCurry, and he was literally in front like that, and he was literally looking left and right. And I've had that in hurling. If you're marking a particularly fast guy, that you might just try and play him from the side or ever so slightly the front, and your goalkeeper is literally telling you left or right when the ball is coming in, and he's kind of guiding you. But that was a disaster. Like, for the Downs to win, that was more than 3 points. Like, for the Downs to win, like, that just totally, deflated them before the game was barely even, going at all. And I think it was interesting to see the Downs kicked a point in the first half. I think it was a Luke Loughlin free, and Shane Walsh kicked 3 frees in the second half. There was 4 points scored into the hill in the whole game, and they were all frees. And maybe that buys into some of the fact as well of how hard it was for Ballyhale maybe to shoot in the hurling game, even though I do think it picked up quite a bit for the football. But once Kilmacud got that couple of, like, it was, I don't know, I kind of had that inevitability of, like, when Donegal got ahead of you in 12, that you're not going to, it's just so hard to peg them back. Barring you can do like what Kilcoo were able to do in the All-Ireland Club final. But for an underdog team like that, they needed to start quite well and keep it level where possible, or keep it tight, and that just burst the balloon straight away.
Yeah, actually, it's interesting that you mentioned the hill. It'd be interesting to talk to some of the players and ask them how much of an impact it was. Remember one Ballyhale shot in the second half that I thought, oh, that's going over the bar, and then you could visibly see it stop up in the air and drop into Eddie Gibbons' hands. And then that reminded me of 2018 during the warm-up for the club final. We were out taking shots from 35 yards, stuff like that, and the wind was so bad that you couldn't even guarantee it. Now, not that I'd be guaranteeing it going over from there anyway, but the point I'm making is, like, the wind coming in from the hill end was desperate. It was really unpredictable. You didn't actually know which way the ball was going to blow. Sully 180 says, how many soft goals do we see in both courts from goalies trying to get involved? If the defenders are doing their job right, the keeper doesn't need to be contesting high balls. I mean, in general, it depends. Yes, if you're going to mark from behind, certainly that's the case. But if you are in a team that marks from the front, if you're a player that marks from the front, it is a case that the goalie might have to get involved. Okay, Shane Walsh, he was brilliant in this game. I mean, he is a cheat code, isn't he?
Yeah, like, for them to be able to call in him after last year, and for him to be their best player and dictating things. Just had a few stats that Donegal Boyle, my Irish Independent colleague, had in the paper today. Just said by half-time, Walsh had a direct hand in 8 of Crokes' 10 scores. He kicked 6 points in the opening 30 minutes, 3 from play. He set up Rory O'Carroll's point. He also inadvertently assisted their goal when his point attempt dropped short and was fisted to net by Shane Cunningham. He actually tried to claim the assist on TG Carr after. Walsh was Crokes' only scorer in the second half, all of which came from placed balls. And Robbie Brennan was just talking about after, and he just said, obviously, scoring from Shane is huge, but defensively, he puts in a huge shift as well, which is part of what we do. He has that type of ability. He's a bit of a genius with the ball, and it's good he can show it out there on those type of days. I think it was 9 points in the All-Ireland senior final as well against Kerry, wasn't it? 9 points again yesterday.
Yeah, he really is a Croke Park player. But Dublin sides are very much dominating Leinster at this stage. 8 of the last 10 they've won, and it's Kilmacud Crokes' first ever back-to-back. Brian Sheehy didn't tug for the footballers, obviously, after playing in the hurling final. Apparently, Paul Mannion isn't too far away, and he could be back for the semi-final. Robbie Brennan was asked about it afterwards, but when he was asked about Sheehy not being involved in that game over the weekend, he goes, the target was the end of he was
Mannion, yeah.
Oh, yeah, sorry, that was on Mannion. He was talking about Mannion and said the target was the end of January from the physios and the medical team, so it's whether we can fast-track that enough to get him back in time. But I think I said during the Dublin Championship, at the same time, as brilliant as he is, you wouldn't put him under any sort of risk. It's not right. If it's not right, it's not right. That'll be the bottom line. If he's fit and he's available, then great, but we won't be playing him just for the sake of it. Did you notice that Lar wall, and this stood out when they were playing Rathote, doesn't seem to matter what the weather is, what time of the day is, he's just going to be wearing a T-shirt only. I was like, this is madness. What's he doing out there in just a T-shirt? This is the manager of the Downs, of course.
Well, you've one lad wearing a T-shirt and you've another lad wearing no socks in David Brady with Rathote. So I don't know what the story is there exactly. But yeah, no, it was a mad one. Yeah, because it was like by the time the football game came around, it was Baltic. Like there's no point in saying any different. It was absolutely Baltic. I had about 5 layers on me in Fairy House yesterday and I was moving around. But listen, maybe...
And you had that head of hair as well.
And I had a cap on as well, a nice woody cap. You can't beat it. But yeah, I don't know. Maybe some lads are impervious to it or something, or they just don't feel it. But that wouldn't be for me now. I have to say, I'd like to be warm. I'd like to be warm and comfortable. And because listen, you know what the worst is on those days, and I know you've probably seen this as a player, when your feet don't warm up.
Oh.
The only thing that's worse than that is when you can't get your hands warm and your index finger goes that cold that it has to get really hot before it goes back to normal temperature again, and you actually can't feel your finger for a couple of minutes. I always thinking like football's not as bad because it's a big ball or whatever, and your 2 hands are around it. But in hurling, it always amazes me. I think we totally take for granted what the elite players are able to do, particularly like striking a free from 120 yards in Baltic conditions. The COVID All-Ireland, I think, was unbelievable what lads were able to do like a week or two before Christmas, because there's days when I've gone out where I just couldn't feel my hands. And if you can't feel your hands, you can't strike a ball. You're literally getting a ball and your hand passing like that, and you're hardly able to feel it. You've no, like...
Your hands are drunk with the cold, I find. Like, they're just slower reactions. What was I going to say to you there? What would you do? What's your favorite thing to do if you really need to warm up your hands on a day like that? What will be your tried and tested method to try and ensure they get warmed up?
I think it's something Niall Claffey that used to play with us said that the builders used to do it. I don't know if you ever work in the buildings, but you'd literally go in, ice cold water on your hands about half an hour before the match, about a minute, absolutely douse your hands. You're going to go through unbelievable hardship with the cold to warm back to normal temperature. By the time you go out in the pitch, your hands should feel good. But also, like, that's more to do with your hands. You do the pulling at another lad for your shoulders and stuff like that, but hands are very kind of specific, and that would have been the one thing we would have done. Would you have had any particular thing?
Yeah, well, I'll come to that, but as soon as you mentioned putting your hands in cold water, so when I was a young lad and we'd be going after the hares down home, I don't know, did you ever go after the hares?
No, we never went after hares. We chased a few rabbits one time, all right, with like homemade spears, but that was about it.
Do people know what I'm talking about when I say you go after the hares? Throw in your comment there if you don't. But what we used to do, you'd be out in the cold. This would be like October and November, Sunday mornings. It'd be absolutely freezing, just ice everywhere. And you'd come back in. And the big mistake was to put your hands under the warm tap, because your hands would just be on fire then. But if you put it under the cold, it actually was a nice way to gently warm them back up again and feel human again. But what I would always do is if I had someone else to puck with me beforehand, I do that thing where you smash the ball into the ground at each other. You know, you could be 15 yards away from each other, but smacking it into the ground and hitting it as hard as you possibly can. I always found that got the blood flowing. Whereas if you just did tips over and back, it wouldn't really get it done.
And what about this? Brian
No,
Cody, the Brian Cody. I always like the clapping your hands even forward and back, stuff like that. Anything, but like it's such a basic thing that I think a lot of people forget going out to play a match. Do all your S&C and all that and be able to run the length and breadth of the pitch, at unbelievable speeds. But if your hands are not warm on a given day, you will not be able to perform. No point in saying any different.
Yeah, catch as many balls in the warm-up as possible. The first few sting like mad, but worth it after, says A. Sully 180. I would actually start off a lot with standing just 2 or 3 meters away from someone and just hand pass over and back constantly to try and warm up.
And left and right as well, yeah. So you're warming both hands, yeah.
And then a few short stick passes and work it up from there. Okay, the Leinster Intermediate Football Final was on this weekend also. St. Mogs Feathered of Wexford beat Dunshaughlin of Meath 115 to 211. And I suppose there's a really... a week tinged with sadness in Dunshaughlin because the sister of the manager, so Richie Keeley's the manager of Dunshaughlin, but his sister, who of course is former Meath ladies footballer, Maria Keeley, she passed away, and I saw the club posting about the intense sadness of it. So really terrible stuff there. So we'd like to extend our condolences, and really, really tough there. So to talk then about the match, I suppose Morgan Ellis scored the goal that helped Mogs to 1-7 to 7-point lead at half-time. But Matthew Costello, who I remember a tasty enough player playing for Meath in recent years, and Aaron Murphy, they brought their team back into contention with goals of their own. Attacking duo Keane Byrne and John Turbett scored 11 between them for Mogs. And their only previous intermediate title winner was Killenarin Ballyfad in 2017. So they're next up against Kerry's Rathmore or Le Piershick from Limerick in the All-Ireland semi-final. But there was a situation with a couple of really strong players not starting for Dunshaughlin here. Rory Kinsella and Kieran McCarrick. And Kinsella only came on at half-time. We didn't see McCarrick at all. Both of these lads played in the Division 1 league final for Maynooth against UCD during the week. And obviously Maynooth got the win. And they're both scholarship players in Maynooth. And obviously that must have been the reason, because they're 2 quality players to not see them play. And, it's obviously been quite costly.
Yeah, by all accounts, I hear that is predominantly the reason anyway. I can't say for 100%, but it's probably cost them a Leinster title. There's no point in saying any different. And maybe they thought they'd be able to prove a point or something like that, and they didn't want them to play that college's final. But by all accounts, if you're under scholarship, you're almost you're under contract. You really are. They're paying their fees through college or whatever, which is such a big deal and takes such a burden off them. It's unfortunate that it's it clashed somewhat with, but there's still 3 days or the guts of about 60 hours between the 2 games. So I don't think it should have been that big of an issue. We obviously don't know exactly the ins and outs of it, but Dunshaughlin were beaten, so it's definitely going to be highlighted a bit more. Big win for St. Mogs, obviously. And Richard Hogan just says Mikey Dwyer, who we also obviously know as Wexford hurler, very diminutive, fast, kind of dangerous forward. He was playing for St. Mogs, so a famous win for them. And it's, as you said there, I think Killenarin, when they won in 2017, Matthew Ford was playing for them, and they had only just come down from seniors. So huge win for Mogs in this one.
Yeah, and in the Leinster Junior Football Final, Castletown of Meath beat St. Albans Adamstown of Wexford. Next up in the All-Ireland series is Munster champions Kerry's Fossa or Cork's Kilmurray. And Castletown won the Meath title for the first time in 40 years, so they're carrying on their fine form there.
Shane, can I just ask you, right? If you're a player in that championship, all you want to do is play David Clifford, am I right in saying? You don't You don't
want to have to mark him though.
No, you don't want to have to mark him, but if you're playing and you're not going to have to mark him, does winning the championship not go out the window? But is it like I played on the same pitch as David Clifford in an Ireland semi-final? To me now, that would mean a hell of a lot. I think that's something you take to your grave with you.
Who's the best player you ever graced the field with?
Hurling or football?
Either, but it can't be a teammate.
Okay. JJ Delaney or Henry Shefflin?
Yeah, that'd be up
or
there.
Owen Kelly.
Yeah, Owen Kelly's the answer. Yeah,
Owen Kelly tip. Owen Kelly's the answer.
yeah. And I played against him in an All Ireland minor football final in 2000, and thankfully I didn't have to mark him though.
Yeah, you're lucky. Good man, Sully, John Milan. By Jesus, there's not a day goes by when I don't get that one thrown at me.
Yeah. Okay, the Connacht football final. Moycullen beat Turlestrane of Sligo 13 points to 6. I mean, it's a great sideshow in this game that former Roscommon teammates Fergie O'Donnell and Moycullen boss Don Connellan, they were on opposite sides here. Desi Keneally scored 4 points. Peter Cook scored 3. Paul Kelly with a couple. And a number of other players got 1 each. For Turlestrane, Liam Gahan, he scored 2, as did John Kelly and a couple of others with a point each. I mean, how far can Moycullen go here? I mean, they're into an All-Ireland semi-final. We know they're going to be up against, I think, like the Ulster winners on the other side. Like, I mean, we're really looking forward to this Ulster football final. But can Moycullen keep this going, get to an All-Ireland final?
I was chatting to a few people from down around there, and by all accounts, the complacency that would have been around them, or possibly around them, or that idea of playing a Sligo team was totally blown out of the water when Strokestown brought them to extra time and really, really pushed them hard. So they were, they did well probably to win the Galway title. With Peter Cook's goal, they obliterated Westport, struggled against Strokestown, and were pretty good again yesterday. So like they're not too far off. We're only going to talk about the 2Ks probably as regards All Ireland's, or the Glen as well, in Kilcoo and Kilmacud. But Moycullen are going to be they've no experience, shall we say, at All Ireland stages. But recent history would suggest that Galway teams, i.e. Corofin, are pretty good at that level, and they've obviously been able to beat them along the way. Or did they beat them, or did Mount Bellew beat them along the way? They beat Mount Bellew my lot 3-9 to 9 points at one stage. But they're underdogs, going to be underdogs going into it. But listen, they have a first Connacht title. It's the first time they've ever got to play Connacht as well, because they didn't get to play 2 years ago when they won it during COVID. So fair play to them. I'm sure times were good down there, and like we'll go into the other finals in a second. But like Moycullen had to make it a clean sweep for Galway teams across the 3 competitions, senior, intermediate, and junior. So it was a fair weekend for all Galway teams.
Yeah, they're the 9th Galway team to win it, and the first from Connemara to claim the Shane McGettigan Cup. Connellan said afterwards, their manager, we started this campaign out here in Pearse Stadium in July, and back then you were only dreaming about being here at this stage. We've had a lot of challenges all year and have to dig deep, and it was the same today. It's a great time for the club, and now we've an All-Ireland semi-final to look forward to, but we'll have a break first. We're just glad to be at this stage and to finish the year this way, and like you said, it'll be the new year before they're out again. The Connacht Intermediate football final saw Dunmore McHale's of Galway beat St. Dominic's of Roscommon, so that was 116 to 13. Pádraig Costello hit 5 points in this game in Kiltoom, and a first half goal from a penalty by Shane McGrath set them up as well. Cian Kelly, he grabbed the late goal for St. Dominic's, and they'll be up against Monaghan's Carduff or Tyrone's Galbally. Do you want to talk to us about the next game?
Yeah, so in the Connacht Junior final, Clifton had a 116 to 10 points win over St. Rowan's Roscommon. Enda Keneally scored the only goal of the game for the West Galway team. They'll now take on Tyrone's Stewartstown Harps, who were crowned Ulster champions last weekend. They'll face them in the All Ireland series. And one fella I want to bring up, because I wronged him on Twitter last year or on one of the shows talking about his age. But Evan Sweeney, who you'd know pretty well from his Lockmore Castleiney exploits, so he's been travelling over and back from Limerick for a good while now. But he transferred from Lockmore Castleiney to Napiershig this year, and ended up winning a Limerick Intermediate Hurling Championship medal over the weekend. And he previously to that had won a Limerick Intermediate Football Championship medal. He scored 3 points at the weekend. So he did a double with Napiershig this year, having done the double with Lockmore last year. Like that is some going now, in fairness.
Yeah, everything he touches is turning to medals at this moment in time. As ever, we haven't prepared our Goat of the Week. Hasn't even crossed our minds, but we're at that stage of the show now, and instinctively it kicks in with me. Oh, by the way, we have to do the Goat of the Week.
I'm actually going to give it to somebody who was on the losing side for Kilmacud yesterday. I thought Dara Purcell was absolutely brilliant yesterday. I just thought he was outstanding, and on a team that wasn't winning at the time, to really stand up and it just even he was just racing through and creating space for himself, put over some great points. I'm going to give it to Dara Person. I'm sure it's scant consolation this morning, but that's who I'm giving it to.
Yeah, I'd give it to Patrick Fitzgerald of Ballygunner, and he probably could have even scored a little bit more, but I still think it's worth giving it to him. And on the football side of things, it's going to be Shane Walsh, isn't it?
It kind of has to be Shane Walsh, in fairness, and I think we get this kind of music playing out the show for Shane Beston is another one. In fairness, the last 3 weeks we could have given it to somebody who got married the previous day. Maybe that's why Thomases want to make sure that wedding is on the Saturday and that they're playing on the Sunday, so somebody can start. But Shane, thanks a million for joining us again. I think you're leaving me in the lurch on Thursday, but I'll have a brilliant show lined up, no doubt. And we'll see you all on Thursday afternoon for Thursday show. Cheers, Shane.